Respiratory Therapist, Live Out Loud. With me, your host, Linda Fry, the Asthma Lady. Yes, I am so excited today. I have another guest co host, and she is amazing. Hi, Gabby.
Hey, Linda.
Yes. So, Gabby is our guest co host for today. She is a respiratory therapist and an RTpreneur. And for those of you who don't know what an RTpreneur is, it is a respiratory therapist that has their own business or side hustle and just living passionately and showing what they do and loving what they do. All right, guys. So I'm so excited to have Gabby. But before I introduce her and her bio, I just want to remind everybody that Rts Share Tea is here every Wednesday on Google Podcasts at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And we are also on YouTube every Thursday. And remember, guys, we are growing together. A lot more content to come. All right. So I'm going to try my best to introduce Gabby the right way because she does a lot. So I want to make sure I get this right. All right. So Gabrielle Davis has been a registered respiratory therapy for over a decade and is the sole owner and counselor at Equitable Counseling and Consulting, which provides Idahoans with mental health therapy. She has earned a master's degree in public health and another in counseling. Outside of the health and mental care field, Gabby provides consulting services for offices, organizations, and institutions looking to add nicotine addiction and COPD education services or improve equity, belonging, inclusion, and accessibility. Gabby is also currently the Racial Equity and Food Justice Manager for the National Co-ops of Grocers. In her free time, Gabby enjoys reminding people that nicotine addiction is a disease and not a choice, dispelling myths about the definition of a lie shift and encouraging folks to say, I don't know, instead of pretending to know. Yeah. Gabby lives in Michigan with her wife and enjoys ruffling feathers whenever her time allows. Community is Gabby's love language. I love it. So we Gabby, we cut from the same cloth. I love the community
Mm-hmm.
part
Mm-hmm.
too. But yes, thank you so much for being my guest co-host at RT Share Tea today. And I'm just excited to have you. And yes, so we just gonna get right into this. And every respiratory therapist, right, has their story, like what got them into the field, what attracted them or how they started. uh we watch each other's stuff on LinkedIn, and
Mm-hmm.
I know your story, but we want to hear from you in your mouth. How did you start?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I worked at a hospital for a while. And as I was deciding what was next in my career, I shadowed a bunch of different healthcare professionals, including a nurse, RT, PT, OT, speech, and surgical tech.
Okay.
And so as I went around, I decided which ones was for me. My first instance with a nurse. The nurse didn't treat the nurse assistant right, so I'm like, hey, that's out. Again, I was a lot younger, so I'm like, well, nursing's not for me. Also, the whole poop thing, not my jam.
Right.
So that's out.
Okay.
And I went with speech, PTOT, and then I was with a surgical tech, and one of the physicians yelled at the surgical tech, and the surgeon
Wow.
for no reason, and the surgical tech didn't, wasn't able to say anything back. I'm like, well, I can't do that. I don't know if I'm not going to be able to say anything, back. But then a
Right.
respiratory therapist, shadow, her name was Stacy Carey. And even though this was almost 16, 17 years ago,
Right.
at this point, the reason I went with respiratory is because she was nice to me. She was so nice out of all the people I went with, so much so that she said if I decided to go into respiratory, her and her coworkers would give me all, of their old books, so I don't have to,
That's so
worry about
nice.
that cost and help. And this was a person I had just met, to shadow. And so that's actually what made me pick
Look at
respiratory.
that. Look at
You know,
that. Though sometimes folks
you
don't
never know.
realize how much of an impact they can have in your life. Look at meeting that one person, and she
Yeah,
didn't, you know, they didn't
it's
have to
nice.
go out their way, and look, it
Mm,
changed your whole life. Look at that, right?
yeah, yeah,
And people don't know. I like hearing those type of stories because
yeah.
kindness does go a long way,
It
right?
sticks.
So okay, so that's how you got into respiratory. And so tell us about your business, what you do,
Yeah,
and what what inspired you, what made you say, I can do this, like
right.
this is my time.
Yeah, well, it's interesting how career changes paths and how uh, people in America, I'll say that that was raised in American society has taught us that you have to be loyal to something for 40 years and then retire. You have to do all of to
Right.
do all these things. You're not supposed to change, but that's not really it. You can let your passion guide you. So, how I came to Equitable Counseling and Consulting, I lived in several different states besides Michigan, but when I went to Idaho. Um, when I first got there, I was looking for a therapist, and it took me 3 years to find a therapist because
Wow.
Idaho is not a diverse state, and I
Wow.
wanted a therapist that looked like me. I wanted to have a black therapist, and unfortunately, at the time, I think there were only 6 therapists in the state at that time, but I
Wow.
knew all 6 of them because the black community was so small. And ethically, your therapist can't be your friend, right? So it
That's
took me 3 years. It took me 3 years to find one that I didn't know already. But in between time, I was facilitating a youth LGBT group, and I heard all of these terrible stories about their interaction with therapists when they were trying to get therapy or once they're in therapy, like full of bias, hate, and harm. And Idaho is a state where conversion therapy, is still legal. So I was
really
mad about that. It is It's
wow.
one of the few states where it's still legal. And so I was upset about that. So I went back to school to become a therapist out of spite. So there again, we have these different stories about things. Like I had never once thought like, oh, I should be a therapist. But in my idea, like in my mind, there was a clear need in Idaho. Not that I can fix everything, but hey, if I'm there, you should leave a place better than you found it. With that, I would say my wife is also RT, and at the time she was working as a professor. So doing a second master's degree was a lot cheaper for me because I paid $5 a credit hour. So there was that opportunity, as well.
Amen
So I
to
went,
that. Mhm.
I went back to school in 2017, and became a therapist. Graduated in 2020 and graduated in May during the pandemic while I worked full time as an RT
I-
and opened a private practice
wow.
that October. But before that, I was doing a lot of consulting, and around equity, inclusion, and belonging, as well as helping other hospitals and institute nicotine addiction programs, and
Right.
COPD readmission programs. So, and that came from the hospital I worked at. They had when I got there, they created this position for me. There was a different version of this position elsewhere, but it was real tiny. The program was real tiny, so I was tasked with creating or updating a program, kind of. But we ended up just throwing it away and starting all over. And
Okay.
that
Developing
program
thing. All
went
right.
went throughout it was a 7 hospital system, and it went throughout the system. And then the nicotine program
Great.
came after that. And so
And not to just to jump in,
mhm,
and Gabby and I were talking about this the other day. Folks don't realize how important those resources are to
mhm.
folks that have COPD, and our asthma folks.
You
Yeah.
know what I would say too, it's a good career option. It's something that students and new RTs should think about because a lot of times, upon graduation, you don't get to go directly into the unit when you get to the hospital as a new
Right.
RT.
You're in
You
the
on the
ER.
floors,
Mm-hmm.
or you on it,
Yeah,
you doing
acute
that stuff until
care.
until you work your way up. But when you are able to provide something that either is not at the hospital or that you may know more about than seasoned therapists,
Mm-hmm.
that makes you uh more
Mm-hmm.
favorable, right, to to do other things besides that floor care.
Job
So when I talk to
opportunity.
students, Yeah, I'm like, learn about ENS. ENS is electronic nicotine delivery system, or vaping,
Mm,
because a lot of seasoned therapists didn't have to learn about that, nor are they required to learn
right. Make
about that.
sure you know.
There's no exactly. So make sure you know that, so you have something, to offer. The people, I had to build a team to work with me, and I had one team. I had 18 other people. I think I had maybe 13, on my COPD nicotine teams. Half of them were student interns, and
Wow.
and, and I only had two people that was seasoned because they were interested in doing things that got them hours. You know,
Look
they
at
were
that.
they was like, yes, I'll learn all
Yeah.
these things. So there are opportunities. Like, look beyond. Just like the reason Linda's doing this podcast, there are other opportunities
Yep.
that you can use with your respiratory career
Yes.
and or in addition to it.
Yes. Doing I tell folks all the time, don't limit yourself. Keep learning. I tell people invest in yourself, because when you are doing this, you're adding value. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what people out here chasing checks. And when you have that, you don't have to chase the check.
You
You
don't.
you will be you, the job that you want will come to you,
To you.
and you will be happy in the career. And I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
folks are not getting that. They just are
It's
staying
supposed
in
to be
these
given.
positions
It's
for
supposed to be
years.
given and become disgruntled sometimes
Yeah.
when they don't have the things they want. But it's also on them. Like, you have a role in it. The other thing is, we expendable. If you get fired, the hospital is not going to close. Wherever you work at, I promise it won't close.
Mm.
You're going to move on and put another body in the spot. So having other things, you know,
Okay.
you know,
Preach. Preach. Okay. So yes, definitely a resource. You found what was missing, what was lacking, and you were able to add your value to these hospitals. Amazing.
mhm.
Great. I love it. So tell us, what were your barriers starting out? If you had any barriers at all.
Yeah, I would say, it's related to the respiratory part, like being a unicorn. Like, I'm very much a person who, I don't care about who gets credit for it if it's going to impact community in a positive way. I just want it to be done. And
Okay.
so as I went on this journey, to be the mental health therapist, I asked in like the ARC forums and things like that, are there any other RTs in the mental health space? Are there any other licensed therapists, social workers, LPCs, licensed professional counselors? And so, like, is it something we could do to partner with? I haven't gotten a response. And so, like, being a unicorn, so there was nothing, I couldn't lean on them or
Right.
exchange
No
information.
baseline, no,
See, right. And so I
not an
went out, I
example.
went elsewhere, which is fine. And so, living in Idaho, there weren't a lot of resources as far as Black therapists or therapists that prioritize the queer community. So thankfully, I had online communities, that will
Mm-hmm.
help with that. The other barrier, well, I don't even look at this as a barrier right now. There were a lot of RTs that had a problem with me having a second career. Like, how dare you leave RT? How dare you not be, excuse me, loyal, or things like that. I don't believe in that. Like, I'll always be an RT. As a matter of fact, some of the clients I have right now
You
are
understand?
respiratory therapists. Like,
Yeah,
so I'm still serving, so I would
the
say that
license is active regardless.
license is active.
That's
My
all it
my
is.
license is
It's
active in 2 states, and
right.
I haven't stepped foot in the hospital, in over a year.
Uh,
But when if necessary, I always have
right.
it to
If you need to go
fall back
back,
on.
you will go back. And folks are, you'll get your mojo back, and
Yeah,
you'll learn the events that are there.
listen,
I don't these things
respiratory
don't scare
being a
me.
therapist, right? Being a therapist will always have a job because people will always have asthma, will always have pollution.
You and now look, we got COVID on
And
top of
yeah,
yours,
so
another respiratory disease. I mean, we well fed over here. This
yeah,
I'm telling people, I don't know hungry respiratory therapists. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
But the opportunity's not gonna come knocking. My money not gonna knock on your door. Go get it.
For you, okay, all right. You
You
see,
know,
we.
go get it.
I guess what you're saying is you were in the pioneer.
Yeah, not trying to be
Pioneering in
either.
that you were the first,
Not
and
trying to be. I might be. I think I'm the first. Right. If there's somebody else that's listening and you are, please contact me so we can see what we can do together, some moves we could, make together. But I couldn't find, if I wasn't the first, I couldn't
Right.
find somebody else. And that wasn't the goal. When I was thinking about being a mental health therapist, I didn't think about being a respiratory therapist because that's already a given. That's
Mm-hmm.
not going away.
Right.
So
Exactly.
like, how can I separate these? Is how can I bring them together? And everything can go with respiratory, right? Like if I became a librarian, if I decided to switch careers and become a librarian, I can fold in being a respiratory therapist. Let's talk about lungs. Let's have an event about COPD education at the library. That
Right.
like how can we teach these other people? Like
Right.
everything can come together.
Collaborating things. I'm
You
I'm
know.
I'm comp- I'm like I still do some bedside patient care, but I'm doing a lot of public health work. Like, so I'm getting a lot more. I've been working with community health workers
Mm-hmm.
who some of them have no background knowledge at all in the healthcare space until they get
Mm-hmm.
to me, and in the community health fields. And yeah, but I am a registered respiratory therapist still, to explain to folks whenever they want to take control of their career, there is a way to do it. You just have to
Mm-hmm.
be intentional with your steps. Yeah, I showcase people like you who have their hands in so many things, and there's nothing wrong with that. Speaking about inclusion
Mm-hmm.
and accessibility and equity, what does that look like when someone is looking for, when an institution is looking for that? How do you chime in?
Institutional orgs or doctors, they ask for different things, right? And I don't advertise this. This usually goes, by word of mouth or, things like that. And so one of the things I get often, the biggest questions around, equity and inclusion for me, since I've been doing this is related to supporting trans and non-binary people when they come into the office or into the hospitals, right? And so those are simple things like how do you respect somebody's pronouns, and this when we don't understand that, where it's not for you to understand, you can respect something and not understand it,
Right, right.
right? And so
Just
explaining
ask.
that, like, you can serve these people because believe it or not, they have lungs. They have the same lungs that other people have. So,
Right.
that's like going into and this happened at a hospital before, and there was a long thing after that. Somebody went to the hospital. It was a trans person. They used he, him pronouns. The sex they were assigned at birth was female, but this is a trans man. And the physician spent so much time going back and forth about the pronouns, even though this person was there because they had a broken leg.
Wow.
So at no point should it be 20 minutes talking about pronouns, and the patient's having to teach the physician about pronouns versus the physician just accepting this is what their
Right.
pronouns are and moving on. But
And
the physician only had 10 minutes to talk about the leg. But
wow.
the issue is, what it goes back to is that that patient still got an invoice, even though they also provided the service to the physician, right?
Wow.
And so talk about like having those conversations with
Right.
patients, or if it needs to be a conversation, like you need to have this education prior to it, just like the surgeons learn about surgical procedures before they do the surgery, on the patient. They have
Right.
some background information, so everybody deserves the same thing. And the same thing goes, for things around equity, and this could be in the office. For instance, let me give you I'll give you a grocery example, since I work in grocery stores too.
Okay.
Biggest thing with equity, we'll talk about equity and neurodiversity. So there are a lot of mental health conditions that are livable conditions. For instance, I'm a person with ADHD, and a lot of other people have ADHD. And so, a person came to me, was like, I'm gonna have to get rid of this person just to have a conversation because they don't move fast enough,
Okay.
for me. So working in a grocery store, like they don't move fast enough. I need something done in 2 hours, and they take 4 hours. And
Okay.
so we're in the grocery store that we're talking about at the time is a store that's not accessible, physically accessible, meaning they have upstairs and downstairs, right? They
Okay.
use the stairs, they use stairs and all these things. They have a basement that you have to go into just to work, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I reminded this person, I said, you are already cutting the job market in half
Right.
because people with physical limitations can't use
Mm.
the stairs.
Right.
I mean, you're already getting less, employees from that. unless your employee pool is smaller than that. And now this person you're saying is moving slow because maybe they have a learning difference or some type of intellectual disability or whatever the case may be. And so now you want, because they can't move fast, you have to find something else. So that means your pool is real tiny now.
Right.
Equity, being equitable will be find a way to work with this employee.
Right.
Equitable would mean setting the standard at the beginning, when it comes to filling out the application, or you're doing all these things where you make it a priority to offer them, like, say, what do you need? Okay, well, I need to work later shifts. Is there a later shift available? And even going further, that could be in a job description. So you have to get to that.
Right.
If the person's coming in late all the time, for instance, if the person's coming in late, for instance, and they see it's a morning shift, they're not going to apply if they work better in the evening. Say that.
Right. Right.
Same thing goes for hospitals. How can everybody not have equal opportunities because everybody is different, but to have equitable opportunities? I'll give you one more example really quick. It's a hospital example. During COVID, there was some point at the hospital I was working at during COVID where we were no longer allowed to wear our own scrubs to the hospital.
Okay.
That meant when we come in, we had to go to one of the locker rooms that was available. There were scrubs in each locker room. They were very binary, of course, because hospitals are behind. That means they had a men's locker room and a women's locker room, right? Okay. And so we're supposed to go in there and change and put scrubs on. So I'm a fat person, so I wear 2X in scrubs. When I go into the women's locker room, yeah, and I use the word fat because I'm comfortable with it, right?
Okay,
but,
I feel you.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like when we talk about those things, like what are words some people are
right. What folks are comfortable with.
Yeah, and so going into the locker room, they had, it was tons of scrubs. They had extra small all the way up to extra large. No 2X.
Right.
But in the men's locker room, I had to send somebody in the men's locker room to get me scrubs. Theirs started at medium and went to 4X. So that's not equitable. It doesn't have everything that everybody needs, not just for me, but that means also no men could wear size small.
Understood.
And a woman could, and so now,
people think about. I think a lot of folks, they just don't think about stuff like that. And that is.
But that's equity. That's what equity.
That's what equity means.
Sure everybody.
I thank you for that. Sometimes providers, they make assumptions. They're like, well, they're not picking up their medication and they're not listening. And it's like, well, you know what? Let's
figure out why.
Right. Let's dig. Let's do some investigation. Let's use motivational interviewing questions. Like, let's try to meet them on their, where they are. And from there, and not just make assumptions. And
that's another thing. Like RTs have a role in that, and there's an opening for that, especially when you're trying to get somebody to have changed behavior. Like motivational interviewing is a good skill to have. Lots of books, lots of classes, sometimes free. That would be helpful. And when it comes back to that equity piece, I'm gonna give you one more example that's specifically respiratory related.
Okay.
I get a call, Gabby, such and such is, we'll say Mary. We want to discharge Mary, COPD patient, but she is refusing to leave. We know y'all have a good, relationship. Can you come talk to her? Like, cool. I'll go and say, Mary, what's up? They said that you refusing to leave, and I'm like, you not feeling good? You good, right? Me and Mary got a relationship. She said, I don't want to go because my daughter is being released from prison to my house, and I'm scared.
Wow.
So the whole time, nurse and the physician, they upset with Mary because it's an issue because she won't leave. She's put up all this fuss, but they never look to see why. I went to go to talk to the social worker. Social worker made some calls to have her released to a different address. That's it. She went home. She went home in like 4 hours.
Look at that. That's all.
But that's what you gotta do.
Comes to like fighting health disparities. Asthma is a big one where we are, especially. Asthma is a disparity, and it's like, once again, we just have to ask people, patients, those in the community, the right questions, and listen, like, what is it that you need to give, so we can give everyone a chance. And it would help the country if it just worked like, so if we had open dialogue about these things. That's why I find inclusion and equity and all this talk around this stuff very just amazing, because it needs to happen. That it all starts from there. And so once
Yeah.
we can work on finding solutions and working on the problem, right? Oh,
Yeah.
you hit it on the nail, Gabby. Okay, Gabby, so if you had any advice for anyone, or a respiratory therapist starting a new business or wanting to do anything new, what would be your advice for them?
A couple things I would say. Go ahead and try it. Go ahead and
Let's
just
do
try it.
it, right?
What's the worst thing that
Like
can happen? You
Nike.
always have respiratory to fall back on. Go ahead and
Right.
try it.
It's always going to
Always
be
there.
there.
Always
Oh,
gonna be there. The second thing is to ask for help. Like, it's okay not to know something. Nobody knows everything, and
right.
you're only an expert of yourself. I don't care how many books you read, degrees you get. Nobody's an expert. There's always room to learn. So ask for help. The other thing I would say is that failure is not final. Failure is not final. So if you feel like you fail at it,
Preach.
that does not mean you can't roll back and either try that same thing
That's
again or
it.
try something different. That
You
don't
didn't
mean
die. I always say that.
exactly.
You didn't die.
You still here?
You'll be okay.
You got time. You got time.
Gabby, amazing, amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, listen, we only have a few minutes left. This is your time. Plug what you're doing, what you got going on. Where can we find you?
Where can you
Yeah,
find me? You can find me on LinkedIn at Gabrielle Davis. You can
I know where to
follow
find you.
my business pages on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at Equitable CC, EQUITABLECC.
We'll have it in
Um,
the description. I'll put it
but
in.
in the description, if you are a healthcare person and you want to work with me at your org as an individual or as an institution, you can reach me at Gabby, Gabby, at equitablecounseling.com. And I'm happy to serve you.
Don't forget, and you're gonna be in New Orleans, right?
Oh, I'll be if you are RT, I'll be in New Orleans. I'm speaking on the 10th about equity and education. If you are a Black or brown RT, I'm creating a space, especially if you are new to the respiratory field or your first time at the conference. I'll be creating a space for us in case you need a partner to walk around with, if you want to be introduced to folks. I'm hoping to have me and a few other Black or brown RTs that's been in the field for a while holding the space for y'all. So students, Black and brown students, come find me.
All right, Gabby. So I guess we will be talking behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing you in New Orleans. We're gonna be
All right.
all right.
Yep.
Gabby,
I'm ready.
thank you again for being our guest co-host at Rts Share Tea. I love this episode. Yes, 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 yes. Because she talked about so many things that are so relevant right now. So I love this, and I hope that folks will and RTs consider these type of roles and making these moves in their career, taking control and just being proactive. And we also want to be show the positivity in this career as well. We a lot of the country, as we know, are dealing with shortages of respiratory therapists, and we're not going to attract new people with negative things to say about the career. So we want to showcase the positivity and where you can grow and expand. And there are a lot of opportunities that are out here as we are discussing today. So yes, Gabby, I want to say thank you again. Thank you for your time and your dedication and your passion for what you do.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for your service to the RT community.
Thank you. Thank you. And all right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I hope you learned something here today. And I just want to say, remember to invest in yourself and to only compete with yesterday's version of you. All right, guys. See you next week. Bye.